It was a Tuesday, which meant the coffee shop was half empty, carrying that mid-morning hush that makes you notice the hum of the refrigerator more than the music playing faintly overhead. I had a habit of showing up around the same time, half because I liked the corner seat near the window, half because routine fills the spaces you don't admit are lonely. She was already there. Always was somehow. Not every day, but enough that I started timing my visits in case she showed. A woman in her mid-40s, hair tied loosely like she didn't care much, but somehow it looked intentional. She read in a way that made it seem private, even if the book wasn't. I'd catch myself glancing up just to see if her page had turned. The first time she spoke to me, it wasn't much. "You always order the same thing," she said, not looking up from her cup. I had to smile. "So do you." That was it. Just that. But I replayed it later, walking back to my apartment, wondering if she was teasing me, or if she just noticed. Since then, our words collected like coins in a jar, small, not worth much alone, but building into something you hear when the room is quiet. She remembered my order before the barista did. I once passed her a napkin because her cup dripped, and she said thanks with a half-smile that stayed longer than it should have. I wasn't sure if I was drawn to her, or to the calm she carried. Most people my age were loud about everything, plans, ambitions, even heartbreak. She was different. She didn't fill silences, she let them breathe. I think she saw right through me, though. "Don't you have class this morning?" she asked once, when I lingered too long with my coffee. "Not today," I said, even though I did. I just didn't want to leave. Her laugh was soft, almost pitying. "You're too young to be skipping things for coffee." I fiddled with the napkin in my hand, folding and unfolding it until it looked tired. "Maybe I just like the company." That was the first time her eyes stayed on me longer than a second. Not sharp, not amused, just measured. Like she was weighing something she didn't say. I walked home that day thinking about her hand resting on the cup, the way her ring finger was bare, the way she stirred her coffee even after the sugar dissolved. Loneliness makes you notice things. The way my phone stayed heavy in my pocket because there was no one to text. The way I'd pause a show halfway through and never finish it because watching alone didn't feel like watching at all. But with her, the minutes didn't feel wasted. They felt deliberate. I didn't know what I wanted from it. I just knew I wanted it to keep happening, the accidental meetings that didn't feel accidental, the easy back and forth, the silences that didn't press. That Tuesday, just as I stood to leave, she looked up from her book and said, almost casually, "You couldn't handle me." It wasn't cruel. More like she was stating a fact, testing the air between us. I froze, hand halfway to my jacket. "Maybe not," I said, though my voice betrayed me by lifting just slightly, like I hadn't made up my mind. Her smile curved small and tired, but not unkind. "That's what I thought." I left the shop with her words chasing me down the street, louder than the cars, louder than the city itself. That night, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. The message was simple. "Same time tomorrow?" And for the first time in a long time, I didn't hesitate before answering. The next morning I was there earlier than usual, pretending I had something to read but really just waiting. The text hadn't left my mind all night. I must have opened it 10 times, convinced I imagined it. She arrived like she always did, hair pinned back loosely, the same faded leather bag slung over her shoulder. When her eyes landed on me, she gave the faintest nod, as though my presence was expected, not surprising. We sat across from each other. For a while either of us said much. Just the clink of her spoon against porcelain, my thumb running along the seam of my paper cup. "You really came," she said finally, voice low. "You told me to." Her lips curved. "I didn't think you would." I almost asked why not, but something in her tone told me I didn't want the answer. Instead, I told her about the park near my apartment, the one with the broken fountain that never worked. How I'd sit there sometimes when I couldn't sleep. "It's not much," I admitted. "But it feels steady, I guess. Like it's been there longer than me, and it'll stay long after." She looked at me then, really looked. I used to go there, she said quietly. Years ago. Before my divorce. I hadn't known she was divorced. The word dropped between us like a stone in water, rippling outward. I wanted to ask questions, but I didn't. I just watched her stir her tea long after the sugar was gone. That was the thing about her. She never gave too much, but enough to leave me restless. I kept thinking about how my best friend, her son, would laugh if he knew I was here, sitting across from his mother like this. Maybe laugh, maybe worse. That thought pressed against the back of my mind like a bruise I couldn't stop touching. She must have noticed my silence, because she tilted her head. You're too serious for someone your age. Is that a bad thing? Her eyes softened, but her words didn't. It's a dangerous thing. For a while, we just sat there, two people holding too much unsaid. She reached across the table, not for me, but for the napkin dispenser. Still, her fingers brushed mine, the lightest contact. It shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. The touch lingered after she pulled away, as though my skin remembered more than my mind could explain. I caught myself staring at her hands, steady, practiced, the kind of hands that had carried years I hadn't yet lived. She didn't call me out for it. She just smiled faintly, like she already knew. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. By the third week, our meetings had settled into something that looked like habit, though either of us had ever called it that. Same coffee shop, same corner. A rhythm unspoken. That morning felt different, though. She seemed restless. Her book stayed closed on the table, her fingers tracing the spine instead of opening it. You're quiet today, I said. She shook her head. Just tired. But her eyes kept flicking toward the door, as if waiting for something, or someone. I wanted to ask, but the words got stuck. Instead, I wrapped my hands tighter around my cup, even though the coffee had gone cold. Half an hour slipped by like that. Silences, small sips, the scrape of my chair when I shifted. I thought we were alone in it, until a voice cut across the hum of the shop. Hey! Didn't know you came here. It was my friend. Her son. Standing at the counter, grinning at me, then glancing toward her. His smile faltered a little, like he couldn't place the scene. She covered quickly, her voice warm but casual. I just ran into him here. Small world, right? I nodded, throat dry. Yeah. Just coincidence. But I could feel her hand tighten around her cup, knuckles paling. He didn't stay long, just waved, picked up his drink, and left. The moment the door shut, the air felt heavier. You see? She murmured, eyes on the table. See what? She didn't answer. Just folded the napkin in front of her into smaller and smaller squares, like she needed something to do with her hands. I wanted to tell her it was fine, that nobody noticed anything. But even I could feel how close the line had become. Too close. Maybe this is... I don't know. She stopped. Her gaze slid to the window. Too much? I asked quietly. Her laugh was soft, but it didn't reach her eyes. Too complicated. I leaned forward before I could think better of it. Then why do you keep coming back? She looked at me. Really looked. And for a second, the noise of the shop seemed to fall away. Her breath caught, barely noticeable, but I saw it. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. My heart hammered so hard I thought she'd hear it. I almost reached across the table. Almost. My hand hovered there, between us, not touching. Her eyes dropped to it. Stayed there a beat too long. Then she pushed her chair back slightly, breaking the spell. We should go, she said, her voice steadier than her hands. And just like that, the moment slipped. A half-confession, left hanging in the air with the taste of cold coffee and something unfinished. It was late when we ended up walking. Not planned. Just one of those evenings when neither of us seemed ready to say goodbye. The air was cool, the kind that carried the smell of damp pavement. We walked side by side, not touching, keeping a space between us that felt at once deliberate and fragile. She stopped at the park, the one with the broken fountain. sat down on the bench without asking, like she'd been here 1,000 times before. I sat too, trying not to seem eager. The silence stretched. Street lights hummed overhead, casting her in a kind of pale glow that made her look softer. Or maybe just further away. "You shouldn't keep meeting me like this," she said finally, eyes fixed on the fountain. "Then why do you keep asking?" Her breath caught the smallest hitch. "Because," she shook her head. "Because I don't know." I stared at the ground, tracing the cracks in the pavement with my shoe. My chest felt tight, like if I didn't speak, I'd never breathe right again. "I don't talk to anyone like this," I admitted. "Not even him." "Your friend," she said, almost a whisper. I nodded. "Feels wrong. Like I'm hiding something." "You are," she said. And then, after a pause, softer. "So am I." She folded her arms, like she wanted to shield herself from what she just confessed. The air between us thickened, heavy with words unsaid. "I think about you," I said before I could stop myself. My voice broke on the last word, thin and raw. Her head turned sharply, eyes finding mine. For once, no half-smile, no shield. Just bare surprise. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "I do." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. She blinked once, twice, like she was searching for the right angle to look at me. Her lips parted, but nothing came. I almost leaned closer. Almost. My hand tightened around the edge of the bench instead. "You couldn't handle what it means," she said, voice low, trembling at the edges. "Me. This. Any of it." "Maybe not," I answered. "But maybe I don't care." Her breath shivered out of her, half a laugh, half something else. She pressed her hand against her forehead, eyes closing as though she was too tired to hold herself upright. For a moment I thought she'd let me in, let me see all of what she carried. Then she opened her eyes again, and they were wet, but steady. "Do you know what you're asking for?" she said, barely more than a murmur. The question hung there, trembling in the night air. A door half open, waiting. The next time I went to the coffee shop, she wasn't there. Her usual seat by the window sat empty, the chair pushed in neatly, like it hadn't been touched all morning. I ordered anyway, sat down anyway, waited longer than made sense. She didn't come. For 3 days the pattern held, me showing up, her absence filling the space louder than her presence ever had. On the 4th day, I gave up and left earlier. Halfway down the block I saw her. Not inside the shop, but across the street, walking fast, head down. She was with someone. A man, older, suited, too close to her side. I slowed. Stopped. Watched as she said something I couldn't hear. He touched her arm lightly, guiding her toward a car. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did and chose not to. That night my phone buzzed once. Not a message, just a name I hadn't seen before, one of those automated reminders. I realized it was her ex's. She hadn't deleted him from something shared, an old account maybe. A detail she never mentioned, but it felt like a ghost walking through the room. I thought about texting her. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, typed "Are you okay?" Then deleted it. Typed "Did I do something?" Then erased that too. I ended up writing nothing. The days that followed blurred. I skipped the shop once, then twice. Told myself it didn't matter. But it did. My apartment felt quieter, heavier. I let the dishes pile in the sink, left shows half-watched. I started carrying my phone from room to room, like maybe she'd reach out at the exact moment I wasn't looking. She never did. A week later, I passed the park at dusk. The bench was empty. For some reason, that hurt more than seeing her with someone else. Because the bench had started to feel like ours, even if it wasn't. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. The words I didn't send sat in my drafts, glowing faintly on the screen. "I miss you." I locked the phone and slid it face down on the table, as if hiding it could make the ache quieter. Outside, rain started against the window. For a second, I thought about running to her place. knocking, demanding something real. But I stayed where I was, the sound of the rain filling the silence she left behind. It was almost 2 weeks before I saw her again. Not at the coffee shop. Not at the park. At her doorstep. I hadn't planned it. I just walked past her street one evening and stopped, like my legs had made the choice before I did. The light was on in her kitchen. Through the window, I saw her moving, slow, tired, pouring water into a kettle. I stood there too long. Long enough that it felt wrong not to knock. When she opened the door, she didn't look surprised. Just wary. Like she'd been expecting this moment, sooner or later. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know." My voice was thin. But I had to. We stood in the doorway, the chill evening air spilling between us. I thought she'd close the door. Instead, she stepped back, just enough for me to enter. Her kitchen was small, lived in. A half-empty mug on the counter, a dish towel hanging lopsided. Ordinary, but it felt heavier than any place I'd ever been. "Neither of us Saturday." "I saw you," I said quietly. "With him." Her hands stilled on the counter. She didn't turn. "He's someone I used to know." "Nothing more." "Then why disappear?" Finally, she faced me. There was no anger, only weariness. "Because I thought it was safer." "For who?" Her eyes flicked over me, my face, my shoulders, the way my hands wouldn't stay still at my sides. She let out a slow breath. "For both of us." The words scraped. I wanted to argue, to tell her I could handle it, whatever it was. But my chest felt too tight, my throat too small. Instead, I whispered, "I kept waiting anyway." Her mouth trembled, almost a smile, almost a wince. "You shouldn't." Silence pressed between us. The kettle clicked off behind her, but neither of us moved. I took one step closer. Not enough to touch, just enough that the air shifted. "I don't care if I shouldn't. I care if you want me here." Her eyes glistened, catching the kitchen light. She didn't look away. "That's the problem," she said. "I do." Something inside me gave way at those words. The wait, the waiting, it all crashed and quieted at once. We didn't kiss. Didn't fall into each other's arms. We just stood there, breathing the same air, the distance thinner than it had ever been. Slowly, she reached out. Her hand brushed mine, tentative, almost apologetic. But she didn't pull away this time. I didn't speak. Neither did she. That touch said everything we hadn't. After a long pause, she whispered, "Okay." Time didn't change everything. It just made it quieter. We never spoke about that night in her kitchen again, but something shifted. She still came to the coffee shop, still ordered her tea the same way, still sat by the window with her book. And I still showed up, sometimes early, sometimes late, but always there. What changed was the space between us. It wasn't heavy anymore. It didn't ache the way it once did. She'd slide my coffee across the table without asking, like she'd memorized my order. I'd notice when her tea cooled too quickly and pushed my thermos toward her. Little things. Ordinary things. There were mornings she looked tired, and I didn't ask why. Evenings she didn't want to talk, and I let the silence be enough. It was never about filling the gaps, it was about staying in them together. I still went to the park sometimes, to the broken fountain. Now, though, she came with me. We'd sit on the same bench, not saying much, just watching the water trickle unevenly. Once, she told me she used to bring her son there when he was small. I didn't answer, I just nodded, letting the weight of it settle where it needed to. One morning, 8:47 a.m., I remember exactly, she reached across the table in the coffee shop and rested her hand over mine. Not long, not dramatic. Just long enough. When she pulled back, she went right back to stirring her tea, as if nothing had happened. But I didn't touch my coffee for the rest of that hour. I just held on to the warmth she left behind. We never called it love. We never said the word at all. Maybe we didn't need to. Because love, I think, wasn't in the confessions or the risks. It was in the routines we built, The way she let me see her without armor, the way I stayed without asking for more. I don't know what people would call it. Too complicated. Too quiet. Too much. But for me, it was simple. Life felt less paused. Like the sentence finally finished. And every time I sat across from her, watching her fold her napkin or stir her tea long after the sugar was gone, I felt the same quiet thought return, one I never said out loud: this is enough. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?